Good afternoon. I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is a meeting of the Building and Finance Subcommittee. This is a remote meeting. Today is Wednesday, August 17th, 2022, and the time is 4:30 p.m. We, the school committee subcommittee, are meeting here in person at the Gloucester High School Library located at 32 Leslie O. Johnson Road in Gloucester, Massachusetts. Consistent with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, this meeting will be conducted by remote participation. The public may not physically attend this meeting, but every effort will be made to allow the public to view and listen to the meeting in real time and participate when necessary. Additionally, all votes taken by the school committee's Building and Finance Subcommittee during this and future meetings will be by roll call vote. At this meeting, there is no public comment. Therefore, instructions on how to speak to the subcommittee virtually are not issued. If you would like to address the Gloucester School Committee, please comment at our regularly scheduled full school committee meeting. And it's my understanding the next meeting is on August 24th at 6 o'clock p.m. Okay. We have to start by introducing ourselves. We're on Zoom. So we'll start with Gary.
Good evening. My name is Gary Frisch. I'm the Chief Financial Officer.
I'm Ben Lummis. I'm the superintendent of schools here in Gloucester.
Melissa Prince, school committee member.
Kathy Clancy, school committee member.
Bill Melvin, school committee member.
Maria Puglisi, recording secretary.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
Our first order of business is the Chief Financial Officer report. We will turn this over to CFO Gary Frisch and Superintendent when needed.
Thank you very much, Melissa. We have a PowerPoint slide presentation, so I'll ask the recording secretary to load that up on the screen. And the first item to discuss is the window replacement project at O'Malley Middle School. The first one,
One.
a CFO presentation.
Oh.
For a little while, yeah. Beautiful picture of O'Malley Middle School. And if you could advance the slide. No, that's the wrong one. We're looking for the CFO presentation.
Oh, that was in.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, the purple. Yes, thank you very much.
I don't have a link to this thing, or else I can't find it. Someone forward me their own link. Yeah.
And because you're the co-host, I think you have to go to Zoom and it'll show you all the webinars that you're the co-host of and you join that way.
All right, got it. Thank you.
Okay, and here's what we're going to talk about tonight, the windows. We're going to talk about, superintendent will talk about the 2 Blackburn long-term, some options. Then we're going to talk about the playground equipment at 2 schools, Plum Cove and Beeman. We have a recommendation for substitute worker wage increase that hasn't been increased in many years for the food service workers as well as the noon supervisors. So that's what we're going to look at tonight. I have a few budget transfers. We'll need an action vote on that. And then the school committee will then discuss the last two items as we talked before.
Thank you.
So if we can, you've seen this slide, if you can advance one more. This is our timeline here, and I'm just going to summarize the timeline, talk about some major dates. August 31st, 2022 is the next major date. That is when the MSBA is going to vote and approve our project. After that date, assuming they will approve the project, then we'll receive it in, we'll receive documents indicating that they have approved the project. From that date, we have 30 days to approve the project. The city has 30 days to approve the project. And then the city has 90 days from August 31st to approve funding for the project. So the key dates are October 15th, approximately, for the project funding agreement, which is approving the project. And then November 30th for approving funding for the project. Bidding will then take place in November, the procurement process. Notice of the award to the lowest responsive bidder will be in December, and then the construction will begin in the summer of 2023 and conclude February of 2024. So that, in a nutshell, is our window door replacement project timeline. Let's move to the next slide. Here in June, we had a meeting, BNF meeting in June, and we told the committee that we're submitting the schematic design to MSBA. The total project we submitted was $6.7 million. MSBA then reviewed all the work the architect has done and then trimmed a little, not significantly, a little. And the new total for the project is $6.4 million. And that's what they will be approving in August 31st. Can you turn to the next slide, please? What was eliminated from the project, or eliminated for its terms of reimbursing the city, was the dome skylight in the library of O'Malley. We had some discussions at a previous meeting with the architect and OPM, and what we could do is put that as an alternate to the when we bid. And if we have favorable pricing, then we can go ahead and approve the dome. We won't receive reimbursement, but we'll be within the $6.4 million.
So again, that's not, right, that's like curtailing project scope. It's outlining what they consider reimbursable costs.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not, so we may, as Gary described, we may choose to do those things still. Okay. Can you just go back one slide here? This is sort of the table version of the next slide. And Gary, if you can explain then what's reimbursed, the amount reimbursable from MSBA and the city share.
Sure, absolutely. So you'll see MSBA has indicated the maximum before the contingency is 3.5 million that they will pay. So if the bids come in less than the 6.4, they're going to reimburse less. They reimburse up to 61%. But the maximum that they will fund is 3.5. Now, if the contingency items, if there are, and they qualify for reimbursement, then MSBA will reimburse up to 61%. So the maximum is about 3.7 million. total maximum grant award.
Go ahead,
Bill?
Through the chair, is that, so that's, there's two things I'm hearing. One is that there's sort of the standard reimbursement, but then there's outside of that, there's things like the dome that they determine whether that's reimbursable.
Well, they went through the entire schematic design.
Yeah,
And they kicked out or didn't select the dome.
I see.
They selected all the other items, excluding the dome, and there was some hazmat
Yeah,
costs that they didn't include as well. But, and so it's typical that they're going to exclude some items.
okay.
Um,
Right, and they don't do asbestos usually.
Right, which is the
So that's
hazmat.
the hazmat. I'm wondering if they're viewing the dome as more an aesthetic as opposed to a real window.
Yeah,
And I guess my question is, what's the alternative? If the pricing comes in an acceptable category, does that mean they would then choose to help us reimburse it, or no? We would just choose to do it out of the project budget?
we would just use the project budget.
And if it's too like, what's the alternative? Is there an alternative to just leave it or to do something?
Something a
Make it
little
go away.
simpler, I think, is what we talked about.
We're talking about sort of both and.
Yeah.
And what we have, because this is relatively new news in terms of what their reimbursable share was, and that the dome will be excluded from the reimbursement. I mean, unless you have, while I was away, worked through some alternatives there. I don't think they have yet, if at all. One certainly is leaving it as is. We're hesitant to do that because of any failure, you know.
Energy efficiency and all
Right,
that.
yeah,
The
and
efficiency.
the original purpose was energy efficiency, that's right, so. Haven't asked them about, is there a sort of capping thing? I don't think we want to do that. We're just looking at
Yeah, they're going to do some more work and come back to us with, some options. Is there anything they can do to improve the energy efficiency? We may have several different alternates within that one item.
So do we, and I think this was discussed at a prior meeting and I just don't have the notes with me. Is there a cost estimate of what the dome was? Like, what are we talking about? $1 million, $500,000
I don't know.
for the dome not being reimbursable? In other words, what is the actual
that. So the next slide.
cost of
Yeah.
putting it in reimbursed and putting it in
Well,
not reimbursed?
The total of the excluded items amounted to 300,000. So the dome was
A piece of that.
a piece of that, plus there was some markup. So it's south of 307,000.
It's itemized on the documents.
yeah.
We're not.
No, but I'm just trying to think, so we're not necessarily out, we wouldn't have to pay 307,000, we would pay that difference that's not reimbursable, right?
Right.
So,
No, they're saying that they won't pay for, I mean, yes, like we're already gonna pay for 39% of it.
right,
Yes,
right,
so
so
now,
we're missing out
61,
61% of
that's
the
exactly
actual cost,
Yes.
so that's what the actual price is, it's not like we're gonna have to come up with the total cost of it.
right.
It's just that we're not getting reimbursed on 61% of it.
Exactly.
Exactly, right, yes.
And so we may decide, or a possibility is it doesn't come in under the 6.4, but still the committee has the option to, pay for it even though it's over. So it's really up to the school committee, and we know what, let's go back to that one slide again. The city share is 2.8 million. So we're going to ask the city to approve the $6.4 million project. They know, and then they'll see that the MSBA maximum reimbursement is 3.5. So they'll have to then pay the difference.
Because we always, on any MSBA project, because it works on a reimbursement process, the city, just like we with the new school building, creates a loan order or, for the full amount. So we can cover the whole thing and then reimburse as the project goes along.
And what percentage of this budget is a contingency budget?
Contingency
Oh, it's at
is
the bottom, sorry.
300,000
Okay.
of 6 million.
Let's see any more questions.
So the city, the debt issue to cover in round numbers, the debt issue is going to be at least $3 million to pay for the city's share. And obviously they may get the authority to go all the way up to 6.4, but we'll only tap in of 3 million approximately. So that's the next steps.
We've been keeping the mayor informed through the school committee process, in the meetings we've had here, and then also working with John Dunn, so he's aware of the timeline and the costs. Next week, more speed with that situation.
Yes.
So next step, sorry. That's okay.
Yeah,
Gentlemen?
absolutely, yeah.
Sorry. So next is 2 Blackburn Drive, and essentially that's about what we will do with regards to preschool and district offices long term. As you know, we've been working on this for a little bit, and as you'll see tonight, you've been working. The school committee as a body has been working on it for a number of years. But what we want to do is continue to provide you detailed information, and then follow a clear process in order to make a final determination about a permanent home for the preschool and district offices. The timeline, which I have been sharing with you, and it has been adjusted over the past year. Today, subcommittees, you guys are getting a detailed update about the work to date, work we've done since we last gave an update. Melissa will give a update to the full school committee next week at her school at the 31st or 24th. You're not here on the 24th.
I'm not here on the 24th, so we do the 31st.
Yeah. I will come forward with a recommendation based on tonight's discussion and work we still have to do on the 28th. And then the intention is that the school committee will have consideration vote on adoption of a plan. So maybe my recommendation may be a revision of that on October 26th. So thank you, Maria. So this is the information we told you we're gathering. We're going to give you an update on really 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 and 7 tonight. How about that? Just won't give you an update on the rate. So the next slide. So you should have in your packet, but I'm not confident about this, a summary of all the work that has been done at school committee meetings. Going back to 2017, a list, if not, we'll put it in that for the record, all the various meetings that the school committee has had the issue of 2 Blackburn on its agenda. And just to summarize that summary, that includes a formal letter from the chair of the city administration requesting space for preschool, permanent space for preschool district offices. That includes a joint city, that was in 2018, I believe, a joint city council and school committee meeting in October 2018. The presentation of the Durham Media study, which we have shared with you, which was in June 2019. And then the school committee referring the matter to the BNF subcommittee in January 2020, and then COVID hit. And that changed the world and also a lot of the work that the committee was doing. And then we've been taking up the matter in bits and pieces here for about the last 6 months. No, it's August now, about the last 10 months. So a lot of work, but what we're trying to do is get it to sort of final determination. In terms of the current space utilization, the preschool with 8 classrooms, 4 small learning spaces that are used for a variety of support and services for students. We have special education, speech, is also, our nurse's office and medical waiting room. The multi-purpose room, which is in the back, and that's uses gym and replay space and also OT, PT space. So it has multiple uses. During the first year of COVID, the 2020-21 school year, it was also used as sort of teachers prep room as well. For workspace, so we, as I mentioned earlier tonight's meeting, the conference room has morphed into 4 workspaces. 2 of those folks are special education staff, and then also two administrators. So the special education program leader for the preschool is in the conference room there, and also so is the director, the school director. And then bathrooms, so 4 small student bathrooms, plus another bathroom that is sort of shared between the preschool and the district office staff as well. That's a preschool use in that building. And also in that building are district offices. So 17 total staff right now. See how they're divided there across the different departments. The only real additions there over the last couple of years are health service, moving the nurse leader into the building, and then the family resource registration, English learner support. 2 folks there, Chris Castle and Augustine Parsons, over that really started one my first year and then Augustine last year. Otherwise, those folks in some shape or form have been there for a number of years. The loss of the conference room means at this point across the district office and the preschool, there aren't any additional conference meeting space, and very little private meeting spaces. So that where they get IEP meetings or family meetings for the preschool, that sort of stuff, or we can have real, a large, any sort of sizable group of meetings with external partners or service providers. The largest rooms right now are tables to have meetings at are the round table in my office, the round table in Katie's office, the round table in Greg Fox's office, which is good for a small one, not for very long. In terms of anticipated needs, district offices, we would expect in the future, we're looking, and as we plan forward, we're thinking 13 total staff in district office space. And that would mean moving food service, health service, so that's the nurse leader, and the family, 2 other schools, and the family resource folks staying at the preschool building at this point. Okay. That continues to be a good location for folks to meet, families that come to, that sort of stuff. It's accessible in a variety of ways. It has turned out to be a pretty good location for that. District offices would need a large conference room and a lunchroom, like most office spaces are. We think of these staff positions as ones that are running quote unquote the business of our operations. They're 12-month employees. They're doing a lot of the work that when the schools even when the schools may be closed on school vacations or summer vacations, these folks continue to work like many folks do, helping to run any organization. This is just a summary of the space needs. You can see how what's existing and then what's expected, we'd be looking for and needing to place folks in if it wasn't going to be too Blackburn. You can see for the most part, we're cutting down some of the area. This wasn't created it was created as a preschool, as you folks know. Public charter school. Wasn't really designed for these purposes, so we sort of have people in sort of odd shaped places that aren't really necessarily, they work as offices, certainly fine, but they just aren't really weren't intended for those purposes, basically. So that's how we're looking at in terms of what space we'll need. We have about 3,000 square feet now, looking for a similar amount in terms of 2,700, but then there's a grossing factor for hallways and that sort of thing. So again, looking possibly for around 3,000 square feet to fit that many folks. Whether that's at True Blackbird or somewhere else. Go to the next slide. The current status of the lease, it began, so the last renewal started in August 2021. It's in effect until next
August.
August. And we have an option to purchase that. That option to purchase is not set at this point. The set amount that was in the lease has expired. So that's something that we have to look at in terms of, and closely at in terms of costs for purchasing. And we've also looked at market rates for commercial spaces to get a sense of what's out there and also what the charges would be. So currently you see the annual cost for renting the whole entire building, preschool and district offices, at $360,000 per year.
Yeah, that's, what I tabulated based on market rates and expenses. But the annual lease, that the payment we make, or the city makes, is $380,000, which is a little bit higher than what we tabulated, but that's within the ballpark.
Yeah. So 12 square feet is $12 per square foot for rental space, for rental commercial space. It sort of is a average rate. You might get higher, you might get lower.
Yeah, that's the average rate in Blackburn industrial complex. Of course, it's going to be higher downtown. Gloucester will be higher. But if we were looking in our industrial section, it'd be $12 per square foot.
It's comparable to what we have in terms of a lease, right?
Yeah.
What we would be looking at, if you're just at the district office and use identify rental space just for district offices, you're looking at approximately $50,000 a year for that.
And that's without the utility cost. That's just the rent.
Right. I'm just gonna, any questions, just stop me.
Any questions?
Brilliant. We're also reviewing the space utilization out of mailing JHS. So this is understanding, really started helping to answer the question about, is there room in this building or mailing for the district offices? So what that means is we're looking at all the space in rooms and how they're being used each day. So not only for classrooms, as classrooms for, with students, but how many students in those classrooms in each period, but also how those classrooms used when students aren't in them. Are there team meetings happening? Are there IP meetings happening? Or is it being used essentially office space because a teacher's planning in there? Okay, teachers don't have their individual offices, so essentially, for many parts of the day, a classroom becomes an office. They have planning time, they need planning time, they have collaboration time. So that's either meeting space or essentially office space. But we're also identifying those uses at all. Because what we know is that if you just look at ones that use as classrooms, that doesn't actually capture the full need. Because we don't just teach here, we obviously meet and collaborate and plan and prepare for students and all the work. And then also, so I can sort of capture that there. We're already made some progress with the high school, just in terms of classroom utilization. We'll look at other spaces as well, office spaces, that sort of thing, meeting rooms. And you'll see here that the 91% attention classrooms are at or above utilization, meaning that they're scheduled at 100% or more. Although I don't quite know what 100% means. I'm above 100%. And then about only 7 classrooms are less than 100% scheduled across being used for teaching students and for other purposes, meeting, planning, and sort of stuff. We'll break that down for you a little further as we move forward. Just want to give you an update on what we have so far. This is the same information in a different format, basically.
Right. When we say classroom, Ben, sorry,
Go ahead.
are we including library? I mean, are we including accessory rooms like the library? I mean, is that considered a classroom in the?
Yeah, so that's what we're going to look into, whether that's library, guidance counselor offices, computer labs, that sort of thing. And so we look at all of them. We haven't completed that yet. We don't have to say.
Yeah, the information presented was just classrooms.
So
Yeah.
far,
Yeah, so far.
And we haven't begun yet with mailing, but we will.
Yep.
In terms of partnering with the city on space needs, we've kept John Dunn informed about the need for space and possibly a Persian to Blackburn. Also have had, just a conversation with him about what is the city doing. We'll be meeting with the mayor at the end of August, to discuss possible next steps. And that's, for all pieces of this. Including, possibly locating with some office space with the city. It's also, or leasing separate space from them, from them, and that would take, or purchasing the building as well. So we'll have conversations to help inform the school committee discussions. I think that's all. Sorry, Tate?
Any more questions? I thought that was a very thorough presentation. I don't have any questions.
All right. Great, that's helpful.
Okay, so the next item to talk about is playgrounds. And those are playgrounds at Beaman and Plum Cove. And this is a timeline that we have shown before. The last column is the delivery of the equipment. And as you see the footnote in red, the timeline for installation may change because of the supply chain unpredictability. We don't have a firm date. We have an estimated date of anywhere from October to November. One school is in October, another school in November, but those are estimated. And so they could change. The main, if you can turn to the next slide, please. The next, I guess the main issue is that we're not going to dismantle the playground until we have firm dates. And we want to do that so to minimize the time when there's no playground. We did bid, or not bid, but we used Combis. And Combis said that we could procure it through the Combis purchasing system, but we needed to get 3 quotes. We got 4 quotes, so we were very pleased that we met that requirement. The lowest responsive at Beaman, and we bid or got quotes for separately for Beaman and Plum Cove. The lowest responsive quote at Beaman was Compan, and that's the one we worked with to develop our specifications for the playground quotes.
Also working with them, they're the ones who are working with EGS vets playground as well. So,
Yeah. So as you can see, our budget, what's not listed here, was $205,000. We had an estimated cost going into the procurement process of $198,000. We were fortunate that the quotes came in $176,000 is our new estimate, including the site work for to be done later by our city contractor, Grenice. So we're $21,000 under our projected budget.
I have a question.
Sure.
So I work with Combis, I purchased with Combis as well. So when you got these quotes, that was through the Combi system?
Mhm.
And did they let you know if it was in stock and available, or did they anticipate that there'd be supply chains? Because my experience with them is it's usually in stock and they know they can get it, otherwise it's not available.
Yeah,
So I'm
they
just
said-
curious if there's been any of those conversations.
Yeah, we had lots of conversations and it was estimated.
Okay.
One vendor was more firm on the date, but the preponderance of vendors were saying estimated November.
Okay.
One came in at October 1st, September 30th. So we're not totally confident on that because of the other vendors are saying November.
And of course, the issue there, which is why we put that in red about the timeline, is get past November, you have until spring. We're not going to be installing playgrounds in the winter time. Now, that, and again, that can change too, because if December is really warm, then you actually can't do it. So, but it's sort of a wait and see act. And the most important piece is for us not to dismantle playgrounds and remove them until we are very sure.
Yeah, thank you. Did you say we split the quotes out, Beaman and
Yes,
Cove?
right.
Would we have, I'm just curious, I mean, if they combined them, usually that indicates, listen, we get both of them, we'll give you a better deal on that. Is that,
Yeah,
did we look at that?
we needed the installation cost to be under 50,000. We couldn't use this combines process unless the installation cost was under 50. And then just in one school, you'll see that estimated cost for the installation of the equipment was 46,000. So if we bid it together, we would have been over that threshold.
So the bargain is using combines to begin with, which is usually a reduced rate.
Yeah, and all these vendors that they have state contracts with with Massachusetts. And so we have the best vendors with the best prices.
What is this? Is this Combass? Is that like a platform where you, like a bidding platform? where you
Yeah.
go in and-
It's something it's a State Department that they vet these contracts with the vendors
I see.
and go through a competitive process.
Yeah.
So they're deemed to already be competitive.
Yeah.
But each of these contracts has unique requirements that you have to meet and follow.
Yeah.
And we met those and followed those precisely.
We work very closely with the procurement office of the city on all, whether it's quote or a bid, sort of thing, using combines. And because they're the ones who really know the rules, and help us make sure we follow them.
I did post something about, I posted a picture of the two places, because we had these pictures in another presentation.
Yeah.
Posted them, and then I posted the timeline, so I vaguely said something about the timeline, but the amount of people that were excited about new playgrounds going in at those two schools was overwhelming.
Yeah.
People were excited about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ready to go.
And, we can also go to Plum Cove then, these are extra dollars, as we've said to you
Yeah,
before.
right.
But it'd be, I think, trying to be really responsive to both the need of Beaman, which came very forward, but then also understanding that Plum Cove needs the same support.
That's
So it's a reduced cost at Plum Cove because there's less students and a little less equipment. So the estimated the budget was 175,000. The estimated cost going into was about 168,000. So between we believe the cost for leveling the site and the equipment and installation from the low quote from M.E. O'Brien this time turned out to be 162,000, or again, under budget and under estimate. So let's look at the next steps after. The next steps are once we have a better time frame, we'll ask DPW to dismantle the existing equipment. Then we'll contract with the city's contractor to level the field. And then the playground equipment will come in and be installed by an approved installer that is dictated by the vendor. Then what we'll do is we'll purchase this engineered wood fiber, and it'll be 12 inches thick throughout the playground. We'll ask the community members from each of the different schools to help us spread that EWF, engineered wood fiber. And then the last step is that we'll let the kids play in the playground.
That'd be a very good last step.
That's the whole point of this, right?
There'll be many steps
Right.
as they play, and that'll be a happy thing. So any questions?
So make sure folks knew that the quotes had gone and come back in and we decided on vendor and keep moving forward. Budget transfers, okay.
So we're not bringing every transfer to you or discussing it. All the transfers are in your folder, your packet. We'll just talk about the ones typically are 8,000 or higher. The first one was there was a agreement between the school district and a special ed parent to provide a reimbursement for travel. Apparently, the parent will transport their son or daughter to the private placement, and according to the agreement, we'll reimburse them for that. So we took the money from an account that we had budgeted, but then towards the end of the year, we ended up with a lot more available in our food service revolving fund that can pay for the food service salaries that we had budgeted in the general fund.
I have a question.
Sure.
Are we reimbursing at the IRS rate, or is it a agreement on a number between the parties?
Agreement on a number between the parties. And so we'll pay, the next item is again, every time we have a new staff member, we outfit them with a computer laptop. And so we get some new staff that it's going to cost $9,000 approximately. We took that money from the food service account, salary account, to transfer to the tech hardware. So that is available for Grant and Brendan to then outfit new staff with the laptops that we traditionally deploy. EGS supplies, that we brought that up to the budget that was comparable to a previous year. That was $9,000 again from the food service salary budget line item. The next one was projector procurement that was in the elementary school budget of $16,000, but it was easier for the tech department to transfer the money and then pay for the projector out of the tech department. So it was just literally moving money to a more convenient account that they can purchase the projector that was requested by Jody at Beaman. Projectors, thank you.
More than one.
And then, as you know, going throughout the economy, there is competition for teaching positions at various schools, and there's a shortage. And then what is happening is we're finding out that we're having to offer to get the right candidate in these hard to fill positions. L teachers is one. We have to, we're finding that we have to look for more experienced teachers that are ending up to be higher on the salary schedule than our average typical salary. And so we looked for ways to fund that. And one of the ways was there was some extra money in the equipment line item at the high school of $13,000. And that was transferred to a salary account that can defer the cost of, of trying to attract teachers and pay for that higher salary that we're seeing.
Typically, what we try to do is our principals leading the hiring for their building. May come to us from time to time and say, come to me and Gary, and say, there's a candidate here who's our top candidate. They've got this level of experience, beyond the first few years, always. It's greater than what we typically, consider in terms of replacement, okay? Is this possible? And what we try to do is across those hires, new hires, replacing folks, not new positions, new replacing folks, is hit that average. Okay, sometimes we can't hit that average. And then the first place we look is within that school's budget, because it's the school's decision essentially. They want to hire a staff member. Can they find within their existing budget the dollars to support that decision? So that's has happened at the high school. And again, as Gary said, we are seeing that at this point, lots of competition and demand for EL teachers and also special education. That's pretty common. I mean, it's pretty common to have those be very competitive. What we're seeing now is that other districts are offering hiring bonuses and sort of stuff, or staying bonuses. We haven't gotten involved in that nor do we want to. We're also seeing though that a number of our new hires have said, and I'll reiterate this at the school committee next week, are saying they're coming here because of the way they're being treated, the experience they're having during our hiring process. They meet, question they're asked, our values, and just how they're treated, and that is a differentiator. That I'm very, very happy about. That's the type of place we want to be, and we are. And that's when people come here for those reasons, choose us over other folks for those reasons. It's a big deal, honestly. So,
Yeah, and I will just say we have a hiring average that we put in the budget, and that's 61,000. So when we were seeing that the average is higher than what we had budgeted, then we look for ways to fund it.
So we're not saving as much on retirements as we think sometimes.
What
Which is
that
okay.
was?
No, I was just saying, so we always discuss like retirement savings, when a teacher retires, usually there's a savings there because not always the new employee that comes in is at that same rate, but
Right.
we're just a little bit off this
Yeah,
year
I think,
with all that's going on in the world.
right. I think there was even one that rescinded. So,
retirement.
Do you want to
yeah,
say?
rescinded the retirement. So it went the wrong way.
Yeah, and that's always a projection,
Right.
and it's what ebbs and flows.
That's such a small amount. Is that just one salary or two?
That was
Might
just
be-
one,
is that
yeah.
one?
Yeah.
Yeah, we were just talking about the one.
I would say, given some of the goals we have, it's good to get the person that the hiring team thinks is best for the job.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. we've had-
Yeah. Yeah, there's a little tension between that and trying to have, the budget look good.
I know.
Yeah, so, yeah, you'll see a difference between Ben and myself. Ben will be saying exactly what you were,
Always the case.
and I will be,
Like, wait, but.
I'll be his other voice.
Just a couple of quick points, if I may.
Sure.
Yeah, I certainly see the need for it. I mean, it's happening all over the country. People are
Yes.
gonna do this, but just my experience tells me that it can be a slippery slope. You can go down, you can all of a sudden, people are kind of almost demanding, hey, this is what I need to come to Gloucester. And if you make that, then I'll probably make the move. But I'm thinking, what if, and I guess my other question is, do we always get candidates for open positions? I mean, has there been a situation where,
Yeah.
where we don't get a candidate, like,
Yeah.
get this
So,
position?
sure, so let me clarify a couple of things. It's not that folks are making, demands necessarily about what they need in order to come. It's that they have the level of experience already, put them on a certain spot on our salary scale, which happens to be above what we may be budgeted for. Okay, so if we're budgeting $61,000 on average for a place for a new person to come in, replace another person. But the person we were hiring has a level of experience which would command a salary above that. It's more that our collective bargaining agreements sort of require that higher salary. Okay, we can run slippery slopes around administrative salaries because there's more flexibility on that, some. But again, Gary and I work very close together to say this is our limit. And there have been cases where we reached our limit and we're just saying, no, thank you.
Right.
And so that's one piece in terms of, and then that slippery slope, I'm very concerned about. Slippery slope is precedent on lots of levels. Salary being one of them.
Right.
Okay. The other part of your question about, there are times where we don't get, I wouldn't say candidates, but get qualified candidates.
Yeah.
And so we repost and we continue to post, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that's more frequent, I would say, this year than in the past.
Right.
Since I've been here, it's a tougher.
Yeah.
Okay, so postings are up longer, particularly special education staffing right now is challenging. And that's forcing us to be creative, forcing us to, in some cases, adjust where people are. But it's a difficult hiring environment.
No doubt. And I'm just thinking outside the box a little bit. I'm like, again, just throwing it up against the wall. Like, if we said have we been creative enough to say to maybe Salem State or Gordon College, hey, listen, we were really interested in special ed, people that are getting their degrees in special ed. We want to try and get creative. We want them to consider Boston when they get out of school. Is that, how do you create that, I guess is what I'm
Yeah,
asking.
so I don't feel very, I feel like we have done some of that in the past.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know the level of detail, some of that fell off during COVID. Now with our HR department sort of, fully staffed, okay, that's one of the areas we'll continue to look into is how are we recruiting, how we can create partnerships, with institutions sort of thing. So it's something I think is we need to essentially rebuild. I'm not clear how strong it was in the past. There's something about that.
Right. I don't even know if you can, what the template would look like. I'm just thinking, it's getting desperate. People, school districts all around the country.
Yes.
I won't say desperate, but they're in the same boat we're in. And they're trying
And
to.
other folks are thinking the same ideas as well.
Right.
So, but it's something that we can, our recruitment, we can up our game on recruitment.
Yeah.
So my question is, just thinking of the GTA contract.
Yeah.
We're staying within our
Yes.
management rights when we
Yeah.
hire, right? So this
Absolutely.
isn't anything different.
No.
It's just a little more this year than it's been in the past.
Yeah.
What I
Right.
heard is that they're hiring somebody with more
More
experience
experience.
than we would typically
Right.
be
Yeah.
budgeting for.
Yeah, that's,
Right.
So-
That's exactly,
So with that, you're getting somebody who brings
Experience.
just a little bit more to the table
Yeah.
because of that experience.
and
That's what we
it's
like.
yeah, we're getting some good folks.
Masters 13 is an example.
Yeah, we wouldn't normally hire there, but.
And there is a lot of movement. Teachers are burnt out in one place and going to another
Yeah.
place,
Yes.
looking. So there's a lot of challenges in the employee.
We've seen some more,
Hires.
we've seen more shifts like that, especially, and even from since like, June.
Right.
Than we have in the past. Our folks stayed pretty solid, the last 2 years. But I think you're right, we're seeing it not only here in
Shifts.
places where at this point, 2 years, after 2 years of COVID, people have some different priorities.
Mhm.
It's happening in employment all over, and we're not.
Everywhere.
And that was my other, Melissa, maybe my last point, which was, does it fit within the guidelines? of
Yes.
the current contract?
Yes, absolutely. We have to.
Yeah.
Do you need a motion?
I move that we take the transfers as presented.
Thank you.
Second.
That was a little fast.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote?
Kathy
Yes.
Bill
Yes.
and Melissa.
Yes. Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Substitute wage increase.
Okay, I have another action item, and I'll explain this. We haven't increased the substitute wages for 2 departments, the food service as well as the noon supervisor. And they've had a lot of trouble attracting candidates to fill in. So the theory is to increase it. Just to add some context, the noon supervisor starting rate is $16.50 for this year. And so we're moving it up to $16. With the hope that that will provide the motivation for people to choose that to be a substitute for noon supervising positions. And the food service, the current is $16, and so we've matched it. The helper position is 16. So both of them are at 16, what we're recommending, and then you can see the increase, and then the hope is that we'll have the candidates to, when we need them, they'll be available.
Just to be clear, your current is the current substitute wage.
Yes.
not For those positions.
For food service, the other one, noon supervisor, is $16.50.
No, so yes, these
Yeah.
substitute
These are
wages here.
substitute wage,
he's
not
he's-
regular.
Yeah,
employee.
you're explaining, you're adding a context verbally of
Yes.
what the current starting salaries are
Yeah.
for the actual positions.
Yeah, thanks for the
I'm
clarification.
Surprised that crossing guards is not on here. Do we have crossing guards?
Very.
So what's our rate for crossing guards?
I don't know.
I'm surprised it's not one of these.
Could certainly-
I can check into it and bring it back to you at the next BNF meeting.
We're hiring now.
Well, we're hiring, I mean, this is, remember,
This is-
we're hiring now, is hiring for like the real staff,
Yeah.
as opposed to substitutes. So, but happy to look at the substitute wage for those. Part of the issue is these substitute wages are out of date. Okay?
Yeah.
But the other piece is, we don't get very many substitutes for these positions. Okay, so we're hoping to get more, by
Right.
raising wages. But they're not gonna be that many.
I only asked because historically these three groups were paid in similar
Yeah.
manner. And that's why.
So, but you're asking about the crossing guard
Crossing guard.
substitute wages?
Yes,
Yeah.
I mean, you're putting these two up, and just, why not do the crossing guards at the same time?
Okay,
You know,
well,
Didn't think about it, nothing more than an error of omission.
only because I know that position is in need as well. I mean,
Yeah.
if we didn't need it, then that's one thing, but that's a tough to hire too, and just while we're on the topic.
Yeah.
Because those three groups are usually
It's-
together
yeah.
to some extent.
if
Do you
that,
want to do that now, or do you want us to bring back?
I think we can do this list on one day because
Okay.
we're talking about
Sure.
three groups and their needs.
right,
More comfortable.
It's built based on the opinion here.
Makes sense to me.
yeah.
I mean, I see it as an oversight because we're in just as need as the food
Right.
service as the.
No, that's fine
Do
to
you
add.
happen to know what the starting salary of, per hour of the, crossing guard is? I just been out.
I'm looking.
Yeah, it's $16.50.
It
It's
is
just-
1650.
yeah.
For
Okay.
crossing guards?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so going to 16 for the substitutes would be in
In
line.
line. And I'm just thinking, somebody might be able to do it here and there, but not be committed to the district. And if they know they have that opportunity to do a substitute pay, it might get us some help on some
Sure.
of these.
Particularly since you're recruiting, you might just have
Yeah.
the interest of somebody acquiring, right? It
Right.
would be good to be able to
Yeah.
get them on your list.
Sure.
As a substitute.
And sometimes they can do both.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, you can do, right, because the times
Mhm.
are different
or days,
for
if
days.
you're a
yeah.
substitute.
So, yeah, that's an excellent suggestion.
Like a motion?
Yeah, I'm just writing it down. Go ahead.
I move that we approve the increase in substitute wages for food service new supervisors and crossing guards to $16 per hour.
Second?
Motion and second. Is there any further discussion? Roll call vote, Maria?
Kathy,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
and Melissa.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes all our prepared remarks. So then the two items are for the BNF committee to discuss.
What time?
Thank you
is
for your
your
prepared remarks.
presentation? 5 to 7, so we're overtime.
I knew I'd be.
You're so formal.
Okay, so next order of business is school committee compensation. This is something that was referred to the subcommittee at our last meeting. There's been some chatter about our salaries amongst the group, just for consideration. So I thought this would be the right place to start the conversation and see what our opinions are at this level. The school committee has not received a salary increase since 2001, which is a very long time. The city council has received 2 salary increases in that last time period. They are currently, as of 2013, their salary was 10,000 and they went to 11,500. If I remember correctly, when I got on the school committee, we were 5 and I think they were 7,500, but I'm not sure on that. I haven't confirmed that. I did do a little bit of research and saw that communities like Peabody recently raised their salaries, Nahant. So it's getting to be a common topic of discussion throughout school committees. I did a little research into school committee salaries and spoke with Tony Gross as well. The charter, our city charter, which I do have a copy of here, states in section 2, I think it is, where when it refers to city council salaries, the charter states that the city council approves their salaries. When you get to a mayor's salary in the charter, which I believe is section 3, 1 or 2 or something to that effect, the city council sets the mayor's salary. When it comes to school committee, which is section 4, it is silent. So with that being said, we had to do a little bit more digging, and that's where we come up with Mass General Law, Chapter 7152, Section 52, which is compensation of school committees. So while there's nothing in our charter, there is a regulation through Mass General laws. And I'm gonna just read the first part of it. So Chapter 71, Section 42 says, the school committee shall serve without compensation, except that a member of a school committee of a city, town, regional school district, or superintendency union may be compensated for his services by a majority vote of the city council in a city having a Plan D or Plan E charter, which I don't believe we have. In a city not having a Plan D or Plan E charter, by vote of the city council, subject to the provisions of the charter in the city, which is silent, a majority vote by the city council is required. So if this group decides that we want to proceed with a salary increase, just know that it would have to go to the city council for approval. And I was told recently by a member of the city council and administration that the city council was going to bring this topic up on their own, believing that since we haven't had a salary since 2001, that it was time. So that's the background on the legal process. But curious to know, because this is our first discussion, how we feel, because this money is going to come out of our budget, whether I know the city council approves it, however, it's the budget that we live in, because we take our salaries out of our budget. How we feel about compensation.
Yeah, I think it's certainly merited. I mean, I wrote down school committee salary. Last time you got a raise was 2001.
2001.
So that's 21 years ago. Sounds like it's about time to me. I mean, and I think the other thing that I've picked up on the last couple of meetings is that the mayor seems to be in favor, seems to think that it's a good idea, that it's long overdue.
Yep.
And,
He has sent his support for this.
yeah, so
Yep.
it's worth opening negotiations with them. I don't know, what does it look like, the path forward with the city council? Do we?
So I would say the path would be that this subcommittee would discuss and come to a determination, make a recommendation to the full school committee weighs in. And if we come to an agreement, then we forward it to the city council for consideration. Or do we forward it to the mayor, to the city council? I'm not quite sure how that process works, but the mayor has extended his support as recently as an hour and a half ago, that this is something that he would be in favor of. So there's one more school committee member.
So I think probably the next step is gathering some comparable. I'd be curious to know what other comparable size cities, or even if they're not comparable, but kind of relatively speaking, we can understand what others
Why do you say that?
cities have done. What have they done in terms of their increase? And maybe when was their last increase to this increase? I would just like to, I have no idea in terms of ballpark of what magnitude of financial impact we're talking about. So that's what I'd like to understand.
So I reached out to Joanne Sinos from the city clerk side, and they are collecting this data on the city side for city council, mayor, and school committee. And she provided a document to me that ranges anywhere from 5,000 per year to 7,000. And 12,000 in one community, 9,000 in another community. But like where you say, are these light communities, Salem, I can tell you was I see them as almost alike. Peabody's just went out last year from 51 to 6,000. I think is at 6,000. But like you said, I would like to see communities that are similar, and I picked Peabody because Peabody they have 5 elementary schools like we did, you know, their layout, their footprint is very similar to ours. But I don't know when their last raises were. Like I look at their mayor's salary, which is higher than what our mayor is making. I look at their city council, and it's pretty similar, like within hundreds of dollars to what our city council is making. So
It's on the North Shore.
it's on the North Shore. But I mean, do we want to look at dark communities? Do we want to take into consideration when their last wages were, or do we just want to, know that this community hasn't had a salary increase in so long? We do put a lot of time into, a lot of hours into the work that we do, and we're all committed to that. And we do want to attract good people, because as you know, this isn't for us, this is for the next city council, the next school committee that comes forward. And there was even a suggestion, to double our salary, but not do it all at once, do it, a proportion of it in 2024, and then a proportion of it in 2025. I'm not agreeing with the amount, I'm just saying that was a suggestion of how to approach it if it was a higher amount, more so than a less amount. So I guess my question is what do we see as next steps for this? And are we even interested in talking about it?
So I would be interested in talking about numbers that are similar to other school committees. And I probably think those who may be saying doubling it over the next couple terms or whatever, maybe comparing it to the city council. And I don't want to be,
Yes, absolutely.
I don't want to compare to city council. Yeah. They can do what they are doing and justify it that way.
Mhm.
I feel more comfortable with the school committee range of other.
Absolutely. I agree too. And trust me, I'm not suggesting that we double our salary, because I think that would be very unfair to the community and to our employees and all else.
Right.
But I am one that is of the opinion that I think there is room for an increase. It's just what is reasonable and under the circumstances and the hours that we work and so forth.
Yeah.
So-
I concur with that. I think
So I think we just
So-
gather some more information and kind of lay it out so we can see it laid out.
It's always a little unseemly talking about money, on something you're never gonna get rich at. I mean, we're not here to.
Exactly, right.
But it is, I think it's, certainly worth discussing and probably justified, and it seems like there's a plenty of support for it, so I think it should be vetted out a little bit.
Okay. So we'll just put it on a school committee, as a BNF meeting.
Okay.
The next one,
Yeah, that is,
same topic?
let me think about that.
Okay.
Let's see how much research we can get done.
Okay.
But we're not gonna drop it. We're just gonna table it for
Okay.
now, and then we'll bring it up when there's an opportunity to gather some information, depending on what's coming at us
Okay.
next month. And finally, we are on to building use policy, procedure, and fees.
The fees were in your packet.
Yep. And are those the fees those are the fees you recommended at our last meeting, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, this is the same document.
That's been in the packet you sent out today, right?
Yes.
Whatever.
Excuse me? Oh, okay, thank you.
I'm one.
It just needs.
So, any thoughts on the fee that was recommended by the administration? I know when we left last time, I was trying to negotiate different fees a little bit. I've had a long time to think about it since our last meeting. And I can report that I'm not so concerned about the fees that were recommended. However, I would like to have a conversation, just to have the conversation. Do we really need to rent our facilities knowing we have no financial gain? With the exception of student and youth activities. Not every school district opens their schools up to the public. And I think with all that's going on in the world with safety concerns in schools, and we want to do our best attempts to ensure school safety, knowing that there is no financial gain to the school district's budget, and also knowing after going through those books for hours that there is very minimal requests. And without the ability to lock doors into certain classrooms in all schools when people are in our schools. I know as we get the new schools, that is going to change because they were designed to have a public area versus a non-public area, the classroom area. But I would like to have a conversation just to hear thoughts on even having our facilities available to non-student, non-youth programs and non-city programs, like if the city of Gloucester or city council or something needed to. So I'm curious to know the concerns and how you can convince me that the schools are secure by keeping them open without security in the building when people are in our building. And if you don't want to have this now, because I know you both have to go, that's where I'm in my head. I'm not even worried about the fees.
Well, I'll just, unless you want to go first.
No.
I'll address that. I'm okay with the amount of per dollar in terms of the fees. I think we talked last time about really focusing on keeping the fees minimal or non-existent for youth groups that have historically used our facilities, a nominal fee for those other youth groups that use our facilities on a seasonal basis, on a regular basis, because this community has supported schools in terms of making sure they exist and making sure they're maintained, and therefore the kids really should benefit from their school. I think kids feel more connected with their school if they could say, I'm playing basketball at my school tonight with my basketball team or whatever. So there's many reasons why I think the youth focus is important. I would be very hesitant to not have the ability to rent to others, only because we've had instances where people have wanted to rent our schools for filming of a movie, which is kind of cool from a PR perspective. And I would not want us to not be able to do so. I think of those things as very one-off. So I'm very comfortable with the one-off where there's very clear parameters. People tend to know it's a commercial use and they're willing to kind of compensate us in other ways or give us assurances in many kind of business ways, as opposed to saying we're not profit, which really not. They're doing it because it helps them further their business or whatever they're doing. So I feel more protected because you can then ask for other assurances. What are you doing about parking? What are you doing about, this, that, or the other thing? They probably have the resources to do so as well.
I bring up this topic because I reread our legal opinion a few times and knowing that other school districts don't rent out to non-city, non-school based groups, that by reading this and interpreting this, when we open it up to one, we have to open it up to all. We can't regulate what they say. We can't regulate what they associate with. And we can't regulate anything other than making sure that there's safeguards in place. We pretty much can't say no. And I feel uncomfortable with that, knowing that if we're going to do it for the movie theater, we're doing it for everyone, whether we agree with their philosophies or not, whether we agree with the conversation or the teachings, if it's a classroom, if it's a organization or something. So that's the dilemma that I'm seeing, and that's what's causing me to say this, in addition to the school safety. I mean, I take the opinion that any non-school, student-based, non-youth-based program should have a security officer in to assure that the building is secure when they leave, because it is not the custodian's responsibility. And I know we are in Gloucester where we haven't had tragedy or anything concerning, but if you look at the world and what is going on in schools, it makes me pause. I don't want to sound like I'm afraid of anyone coming in the school, but I don't think through our policy and procedures that we have guaranteed that our schools are safe when we open them up to the public for such a nominal amount. I mean, we are not the only space in Gloucester that rents space, and we are allowing any group to come in for $100 an hour, which is below what most would charge. So I think we encourage people by these prices to come into our schools. And I, for one, am just not comfortable knowing that we can't distinguish from any group, anyone. Knowing that we do not get any financial gain from it, nothing, zero in our budget. I feel more comfortable having a policy that is consistent with other school districts where they don't rent to groups outside of non-student, non-youth, non-city related events. That's just how I feel. I mean, I don't expect everyone to feel that way, but I have a job where I see the worst in the world. I have a job where I see what goes on in the community. So my brain is trained to go to making sure that there's safety and accountability and processes in place to ensure the safety of children and parents and residents of the community. So that's my way I zone in on this topic, but I don't expect everyone to feel that same way. But I'm just curious to know the reaction. And like I said, if this is too much to take on today, because I know that there are other commitments,
Yeah.
I'm happy to continue this conversation.
Yeah, no, and I'm happy to continue it as well. I mean, when we say we have to allow everyone in, isn't that dictated by the Supreme Court? Isn't the
Yeah.
Supreme Court said, that's the way it is.
If we rent to one
We
non-student,
have to-
non-school
we have to allow-
related
we have to
person,
do
we
the
have to
same
rent to everyone.
Yeah.
We can distinguish between non-student, non-youth and nobody, but we can't, when it comes to everyone that else that is non-student, non-youth, then we have to let that group in.
Right.
So we have three separate groups, right? We have the student related, we have the youth, the group youth related that some come to our school and some don't, and then we have everybody else.
Right. One of the things, and I actually have done some homework on it myself, which is rare for me, but one of the things that I've picked up on with regards to school committees, because this discussion goes on in school committees all over the country. How do we handle usage of our buildings? So one of the things that I've kind of picked up on is, and I believe you've pointed it out in the past, is that a lot of school committees are saying, okay, our answer to that is we'll just set up a really short contract. We'll say, we'll let you use the facility for 6 months and then that's it. It's not indefinite. It's not, it's closed end. And I think I'd probably be a little bit more comfortable with that. Looking at that as say, maybe we say 6 months, or maybe we say a year, and that's it. Instead, I'm just putting it out there.
No,
as an option.
Well,
I saw you kind of.
because I don't look at 6 months use of a school as short term. I look at that as long term. That's why, longer term, not necessarily long term.
Okay.
But I mean, like, so on the licensing board, right, this is another part of my life. We allow certain people to do things so many times per year. So if we were to talk about something like that, like in other words, they can get 5 different types of licenses per year. In other words, we would allow a group that is not school-based, school-related, to use our schools 5 times a year. That's something I would feel comfortable with, but I would also put safeguards in place, right, for those 5 times a year. In other words, who's doing a sweep of the school afterwards to make sure that it's secure, doors are locked, no one stays behind, there's nothing left behind, things like that. This is where my biggest concern is the safety of the school once it's been open to the public. With the school-based stuff, we usually have parents, right? They're usually in the building with the kids, or staff is in the building with the kids. So those situations I'm comfortable with, but when we're opening doors and just putting one custodian in for 100 people, that's where I start to go in a different direction.
Are we talking about specific groups that are using the facilities now at 100 people?
Nope, any group. So a group that is, because we really, first of all, we haven't had people rent before,
Right.
right? So this is new to us.
Right.
We don't have income coming in from this, so this is a new situation.
Yep.
So I have to look at it in a very broad view going forward. Okay, so now someone's renting our schools, which could chatter to someone else renting our schools, right? So we're moving forward in a direction that we haven't been before, so we have to make policies and procedures about that.
Yep.
So I'm not looking at our current situation, I'm looking at, okay, now that we're doing something that we've never done before, we've opened that door.
Yep.
Right? So, okay, so now what are the concerns with that, and where are we going with that?
Yep.
So that's where I
Yeah.
just dove into it and started thinking like, okay, this is happening now. What if this one comes, and what if that one that comes is very controversial, we can't say no,
Yeah.
because we've opened the door. But if we have a policy that limits, okay, if we do agree to open the door 3 times a year, or 5 times a year, what entity would need more time than that without making our school the operation of their business?
I don't know that. I do, just to get back to your past comment, I don't like the broad brush stuff in the, when it comes to the safety of people. Like, you don't have to live in that world to recognize that bad things happen, regardless of whether it's renting a school out, in the school, look at, I mean, I don't even want to bring up examples, but there's plenty of things that happen within the context of the school. It doesn't have to be an outside group. I think there's just as much chance as something bad happening in a school sponsored event as there is in a non-school sponsored event. My other issue is, what if, let's say a group says, and it's for me, it's an issue. What if a group says, okay, they're not going to let us in the school, but the city's completely separate. City's a totally different ball of wax. What if they say, well, we'll go to the city, we'll say, maybe we can set up a tent in the parking lot, because the school committee doesn't handle the parking lot.
We
Maybe
do.
out on the field, the athletic field. What if we set up a tent on the athletic field?
So just clarify, do we do parking lots or is that DPW?
No, we
No,
do.
we do
road-
parking lots.
That's for like road races.
Yeah, so what if this group B said, you know what, we can't be in the schools anymore, but maybe we can be on the athletic fields, and we lose complete say in that. All of a sudden, is it not important to us that, well, A, we're not getting any money for it, and B, what about the safety of the kids involved? I just think it's a bit of a double-edged sword to say, listen, we're
It's
concerned with you as
secure,
long as it's under our control. The minute it's out of our control, it's not our
So
fault.
they can go to the field now. By opening our school doesn't stop them from using the field, right? 'Cause they
Yeah,
can
I'm
still
just
go to
putting that in the
city now.
context of the safety question. I think
Yeah.
it's a little bit,
I think there's a difference between a secure field when everybody leaves, and there is a secure school building where classrooms don't lock and doors don't lock. In some of our new schools, they do, and they will, the ones coming forward. But right now, we have schools that there's no locking mechanism, as
Yeah.
far as I know. I don't know that all this.
I'm not sure I say that.
So can you lock all the classroom doors?
Flashing doors have locked, it's locked. Yeah.
So all the doors in our
I'm not gonna
schools,
spend- I'm not
exactly,
spending
right,
everything.
yeah, no, and I'm not, it's not anything other than that. Like I said, our new buildings are designed to have a public area, right, which is how it should be, that keeps the school and administration separate, and that's the public use part of the building, so the rest of the facility is secured. We don't have that in our older buildings yet.
respectfully, I understand concern, and I just feel like it's kind of, for me, it's a little bit of the, we can't live in a bubble. We can't operate the
Right.
schools, we can't
Yeah.
operate the world in a bubble. There's bad things that are gonna happen. And we do everything we can to mitigate that and make sure it doesn't happen, but I just get concerned that we're saying, okay, as long as it's a school event, it's gotta be safe. And if it's a non-school event, there's a chance for problems.
So then that brings me back to where we added in our policy, the public school district, as it expects of any organization using its facilities, does not discriminate in its educational programs, activities on the color of basis of race, color, religion, et cetera, right? So we can't discriminate. We can't tell who we rent to that they can't discriminate. We only cannot discriminate in who we rent to. We can't say to a group, you can't talk about, I don't even know, what's a bad topic? I'm not gonna say anything good, it's probably gonna go real
Right.
bad, so I'm trying to think of something not so bad. Like, you can't, a group wants to come in and say kids can never go out after 5 o'clock, right? And we're all completely opposed to that.
Right.
We can't stop them from talking about that. We can't stop them from encouraging their membership to grow and use our schools to do that, right? Because we can't tell a group not to discriminate because there's the freedom of speech, the freedom of association. We can only say we're not going to discriminate, and we hope you don't either. But if we have a group that comes in that is discriminating in some way, we have no control of that, and we're giving the $100 an hour to the city. So that's one of my concerns. Another, like I said, is even more so, is who is checking these buildings to make sure they're secure every time someone rents the building? Or are they just saying, oh, they're not a problem, just lock the door and we'll be in on Monday? I don't know that we have the right security procedures in place at this point in our conversation yet, if we're gonna open it up to any group, because we're not just picking groups, it's gotta be none or all.
Right.
So that's
So
my
what if
point.
the chamber wants to do a home show in an auditorium? Which is good community gathering
Wholesome.
and helps the businesses in town to
We
show their
can waive
flooring.
our policy for a one-day event. That's like, what if a church burns down, right? And they need a space, you can still waive your policy. But how often does that happen, and has it happened? I mean, we did have the health fair
Years ago, there
here,
was something in the.
there was a
in the
health fair
gym
here, but that comes down to the city-sponsored events as well. City-sponsored events through DPW, through the Board of Health, things like that. I just want to have the conversation, I'm not trying to
Yeah.
convince you my way.
And I respectfully want to have the conversation as well. I think that it's probably a disagreement on, how we should proceed with it.
I just don't want to go too far in
Yep.
disallowing.
Mhm.
Because, I think those, if it's a non-community based group, I do think we should, I think we provided in our policy that it has to come to the school committee. And
Only if it's more than once, only if it's longer term.
right, so I think in those situations, we can then say, we just don't want the wear and tear because it's not community or youth.
But why are you allowing the wear and tear for another non-community group as opposed to the one we would say no to? How would you justify that?
I don't know.
Well, this is why we develop policy that's fair and equitable to all, right? So this is the open it up to all or open it up to no one. So I think if we told someone, no, because we don't want you to do that wear and tear, I mean, if it was ripping down walls or something, of course, that's a different topic, but how can you tell one group over another, no, unless it did physical damage to the building? But typical wear and tear, that's another thing, wear and tear. Do we want wear and tear on our buildings, our new schools for $100 an hour that we don't get? So these are the things I've been thinking about, not just, I get into deep thoughts about certain
So I
topics
think-
sometime, and this is
I
where I'm
think
at with it.
everything you're talking about kind of sets us back to the policy, which that we were like already at fees. So we're, so it's a little more complicated in terms of a discussion. I don't think we're gonna resolve it tonight. I guess I don't want to make policy based upon one situation or another. And if it's a safety concern, then I would want to make a policy that addresses the safety issue. If it's a wear and tear concern, I want to make a policy that says, that's just a little too much overuse. Right? To have the ability and the flexibility to say, you know, it's an old school, you know, as it is now, it's difficult to keep it, you know, looking as good as it does, and we don't want to have any reason to think, you know, any reason to have to explain to our families why anything got broken or whatever, right? So I think I want a policy that, I want our policy, and it may reflect it already, that gives us that ability to say, you know, no for this, but maybe do it there.
No, meaning the activity, the type of activity that's going on, because it could cause wear and tear, not because of who they are or what they're
Yeah.
saying or things like that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's different.
I'm certainly committed to meeting as often as we need to kind of work this out. I don't think it's gonna happen tonight, but I know it's important to you, I know it's important to me, I know it's important to the committee, so whatever it takes to kind
And
of.
I know it's important for the administration to be
Yeah.
able to deal with requests.
So I'm just, I brought this up because there is talk in the community. We are getting email requests for information. Because there is an expectation that we are going to tell people that they can't rent if they don't comply with anti-discrimination. And the message back has to be that we cannot control that. We are the ones that can't discriminate. What happens in the building when those rent from us is out of our control once we open the door. So I just want to be very clear that those are the legal limitations we have.
I also want to make sure that people understand the city rents to people and does not, and faces similar situations, and they still rent.
Right, at school, kids, classrooms. Just the national security on that. That's where I am, not, like I said, I completely understand. I'm sure I am overreacting in many ways like I do on things that I feel passionate about. I'm not expecting to convince you anything other than I want to have this conversation. I like to have it on record so that when we move forward and people approach us, our response is, we talked about that, we considered it, and this is where we're at. So that's all.
Okay, so we should probably meet sooner than next month on this because the school year is beginning.
Yep.
And we've been trying to get this in place. I do think there are important things in terms of fee structure that should be addressed. Also,
And know that where I am with the
procedures, I think we've done some great work on procedures, kind of tightening up all those pieces. I think it's important to make sure we get this in place.
So I would ask, you brought up having a wear and tear policy and a security policy. Don't you see that as being part of this policy?
Sure. Okay. Absolutely. I mean, I could see that as part of kind of the discretion of the school committee.
Yeah.
To be able to say no, and we may have different reasons for different reasons, you know, for different requests of non-school, non-youth related requests. Right? Yep.
So
It's like the motocross at Stage 4 Park. Great event, lots of fun. Some people think it's the best thing ever. Some people say you're killing the field. Right?
I always liked it.
when did that happen? I missed that.
You missed it, it stopped.
Probably 5 years ago, it stopped.
No, it's coming, the
It's-
Euro, no, the
Oh, you're coming back?
Euro, what it was, I think I just approved it.
Wow.
They did it, they just, no, they didn't do that, that was a different one.
Different thing.
Don't get Mr. Melvin excited.
Great event.
It is, yeah.
I just want to be clear on our next steps. Obviously scheduling next meeting obviously is one piece that we'll work with you on. On the security and the wear and tear, does that, are we developing some language on that to include in the policy?
I think we have to come to an agreement on it first, I think we need to continue our conversation.
Okay.
And can probably figure that out quickly. I'm anticipating.
Okay,
On the fees, I don't think we need any more work, do you? I mean, I'm okay with the fees, I'm just
The fees
questioning,
is
do we even need a
Yeah.
fee for non-school? So that's where I'm okay with the fees that were
so,
presented.
and then, we will continue to approve, on a case-by-case basis, not long-term.
What do you
know,
consider long-term?
Meaning like a month at a time type of thing. Like, I'm not gonna approve anything that's requesting until, November, December, January, February, March, April, okay? We will approve sort of on a month-by-month basis. And we'll notify folks that fees may change and some policy procedures may change, okay? So they know that, a month from now, when we get into the next month, that it could be different. Okay? So that's
Whole
how,
agreement.
it's sort of like a month-to-month lease in a sense,
Yeah.
Well, I think that gets back to kind of the language we put in, which is, this is not an outside organization's place of business.
Right.
They are.
My only concern there and saying it out loud is sort of leagues, but even them, it's sort of like what might change there is fees might change. There's nothing that tells me at this point that like a basketball youth league has been using our facilities for the last 10 years. Nothing in terms of your conversations work when we built these, we're moving away from that. No one, everyone's supporting youth,
Correct.
continuing the youth sports.
Absolutely.
But we'll make sure folks know as we approve building use of this, until it's resolved that at any moment that, a few things can change. And that's, and if they ask to see it, the draft procedures, we share that obviously, so we'll go on a case-by-case basis.
Can I say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to, if there's any other pieces in terms of the discussion around which groups, right now, we have sort of A, B, and C, I believe.
Right.
Please look at whether that's not C or not part of B, in terms of what you're discussing, in terms of opening up to which types of groups. I wasn't sure if it was clear cut or if it's sort of a different.
Use the groups the way you want the groups, A, B, and C.
Right, I think we did talk about that, and I
Yeah.
think there's some clarification
Yeah.
or some recap or.
Yeah, so
You
just.
may want to tweak that.
Yeah, exactly right. And then we obviously will, we can.
And I think our conversation centered around continuing in a similar way with these youth groups in terms of their fee structure.
I just wasn't sure.
And I didn't know if our language matched that.
Right, B was youth groups and locally based
Non-cluster.
nonprofit groups.
Nonprofit.
I'm not sure if in your as you continue, do you wanna, is that a?
Separate them.
Yeah, I just don't know. I just wanna bring that up.
Yeah.
So we, for folks to consider.
I think our prices at C are nonprofit prices.
Therefore, B is for locally based nonprofits.
Right,
And-
no, but what I'm saying, in my opinion, I think B should be for youth groups
Yeah.
and any nonprofit should be moved into C.
Okay,
Oh,
so that's,
That's what I'm
the type
saying.
of detail we'll need to get.
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention that during we're discussing the memorandum of agreement between the director of DPW and the superintendent. And in that document, we talk about the school district to gain some of the fees from the building use. So I just want to let you know that
That's
discussion
helpful to know.
is happening.
And no, too, I reached out to the DPW to try to get their fees for field use and how they break it down.
Yeah.
And did not get a response as of yet. But
Maybe you
will.
tell them you want to rent it.
I will at the next meeting. Just because I'm trying to look for consistency as well. It only makes sense that if you're renting out field and it's broke down in certain groups, that we try to stay similar to
Yeah.
that if we agree, right? So
Yeah,
there's
we
no
have discussed
confusion.
that, and there's groups that are like, for example, AAU programs that use our fields.
Right.
And, it might be 50% Gloucester kids, it might be 50% kids from out of town.
And what do they pay?
What do they pay?
Right.
And
Is it Janine that does the fees, is that their contact for the DPW?
Yeah, we work through Janine.
Janine Harris.
Who?
Janine Harris.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Okay. Thank you for entertaining my conversation.
Sure.
Right, any other business to come before? Yeah, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Roll call vote?
Kathy, yes. Bill,
Yes.
Melissa,
Yes, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
You're late.
thank you.
Thank you.
Kind of rubber, man.